From beings older than Morax to the strongest human in Teyvat, the Fatui Harbingers are the highest ranking and most powerful officials of the Fatui, an organization that MiHoYo simultaneously wants to be the driving antagonistic force of the game and goes out of their way to redeem. But that aside, how much do we actually know about each member of the Harbingers? Obviously, some like Childe we know a lot about, whereas some like Columbina and Capitano we gotta do a little bit of stretching to find some information. When one joins the Harbingers, they not only gain a delusion gifted to them by the Tsaritsa, which is a considerable power boost, but they also get a shiny new name to go along with it. Pulled right from the Commedia dell'arte, the Tsaritsa obviously a big fan of Italian playwrights. So without further ado, let's get into the lore of each of the Harbingers. I'll do this in the order they're ranked in because it's way more fun that way. So starting with the weakest thrall of the Fatui, someone who lowers the collective prestige of the Fatui. We have the youngest Fatui Harbinger, Childe. Teyvat's best ice fisher, before becoming a Harbinger, Childe's name was Ajax. The oldest of four, Ajax was born in Snezhnaya, very different from the charismatic, fearless, and battle-thirsty man he is today. He was once a pussy, but this all changed when at the age of 14 he fell victim to the Abyss's child-snatching operations. Get it? Child? Okay. Whilst in the Abyss, Childe would run into a mysterious sword master named Skirk, who would teach him how to fight and even taught him how to use his foul legacy, which, funnily enough, I thought that came as a result of his delusion, but no, that's just a part of him. Delusion or not, he could use his foul legacy. Anyway, after emerging from the Abyss 3 months later, although to him it felt like 3 days, he learned to relish battle and with a new arrogant and cocky attitude would quickly earn a reputation for leaving a mess in his wake. It got so bad that after he became a Harbinger, other Harbingers would try to ensure all his missions were nowhere near Snezhnaya due to the destruction he causes. Due to his non-stop fighting and Childe laying waste to the town of Morpisoc, his father would soon enroll Childe in the military, hoping they could beat some sense into him. However, Childe would play an Uno reverse card and beat every Fatui soldier put in front of him, much to the dismay of his father, but to the delight of a man watching by the name of Pulcinella. Pulcinella, seeing how well Childe could fight and how he always seemed to be the eye of the vortex, would induct Childe into the Fatui under the pretense that he was doing it as punishment for all that he's done. Here, Childe would rack up countless victories before eventually becoming a fully fledged Harbinger. Due to Blue's Clues being the 10th ranked Harbinger, I'll just skip that one and move on to the 9th ranked Harbinger, Pantalone, also known as Regrator. Born poor, Pantalone never received a vision, and he still doesn't so far as we know. I mean, not because he was poor, it's just that he was born poor and he didn't get a vision. I mean, yeah, brother drew the short stick in life, it happens. Due to having never received a vision, Pantalone wondered why the gods held dominion over many aspects in life, and as a result, he set his sights on becoming rich. Good on him as well, because he became the richest Harbinger and currently runs Snezhnaya's economic policies. He's so rich, in fact, he permanently rented out the Goth Grand Hotel in Mondstadt for the Fatui. According to Wanderer, Pantalone is obsessed with the idea of a fair exchange, so much so that he wants to reverse the natural imbalance between gods and humans. What exactly he means by this is unknown. In the Commedia dell'arte, Pantalone is a greedy man who uses his social standing to bully others. For now, that's all we really know about Pantalone, but I think him being ranked above Childe demonstrates that there is more to the rankings than just pure strength. So, moving on up to the 8th ranked Harbinger, we have, or had, Signora. Signora, whose real name is Rosaline Kruzicka Lofalter, is currently pushing up the daisies. She's joined the Invisible Choir, is playing with the rabbits with Lenny, and is pining for the Yords. That's right, she is, say with me, dead. Before deciding she wanted to die, however, she was once a maiden 500 years ago in Mondstadt, and she fell in love with a knight named Rustam. She would eventually be accepted into Sumeria Academia and head out for it. By this point, she had already learned to use Pyro, but how is not really known. While in Sumeria, the Cataclysm would hit, and Rustam would be killed. Filled with grief, Rosaline would use her life's flame to cleanse the world of its crookedness, and she would henceforth be known as the Crimson Witch. She would only kill monsters, but became feared by people nonetheless. Before being fully consumed by the flame, she would be found by Piero, who sought her as an ally. She received a cryo delusion to suppress the flames and would join the Fatui Harbingers, henceforth becoming known as La Signora. Her notable achievements as a Harbinger include peacefully taking Venti's Gnosis, playing middleman between the Geo and Cryo Archon, and putting up a close fight between herself and the Shogun. So, I mean, she's tied with the Doctor for the most Gnosis he's obtained, and he's ranked 2, so I mean, you gotta tip it, that's gotta count for something, man. The 7th ranked Harbinger is Sandrone, also known as Marionette. Not much is known about her other than she likes to tinker with machines. The first time we see her, she's riding a modified ruin machine, and pure speculation on my part, but I think all the robot Catherines we see may have been made by her, somewhat connected to her. I'm a little disappointed though. I thought she'd show up in Fontaine, but I don't know, I guess not. According to Child, Sandrone always looks at him as if she wants to kill him, and according to Wanderer, she has a terrible personality. I'm not really sure what that means coming from him, however. In the Commedia dell'arte, Sandrone and his family were all represented by puppets. The 6th ranked Harbinger was Scaramouche, a prototype puppet made by A before she created the Shogun. She would set him free after creating the latter, as she couldn't bring herself to destroy it. He would grow to hate her and all the gods for this decision. Little racist if you think about it. After being found at the pavilion he was abandoned in, he would work at the Tatarasuna mines, before a man named Dottore would infiltrate it, raise hell, and most notably hand Scaramouche a box with a heart in it stating that Scaramouche's friend Niwa had killed a random person and gifted the heart to Scaramouche. You know, because he was a puppet and like something Wizard of Oz. This horrified Scaramouche, who didn't want a heart that was earned through such cruelty. This of course was all a lie, and Dottore actually killed Scaramouche's friend Niwa, cut his heart out, and gave it to him. I mean, that's some cold shit. Dottore feeling a little silly on that day. After leaving the mines, he would find a sick boy, become friends with him, and get angry when the sick boy died. Something like that. Fed up with life at this point, he began wandering Inazuma under the name Kunikozushi, and would be found by Piero. Piero convinced Kunikozushi to join the Fatui, and it was under the Fatui that he would have his full power unlocked by Dottore. After completing an expedition to the Abyss under the orders of the Tsaritsa, he became the 6th ranked Harbinger and with the new name Scaramouche. This mostly takes us to the events of the game. There was also that thing with like Kazuha's family sword, but I don't know. The 5th ranked Harbinger is a fucking hobbit named Pulcinella, the mayor of Snezhnaya. He is very fat and has a long nose. Not much is known about him other than he has a close relationship with Child's family, but according to Child's voice lines, he thinks Pocahontas is saying something nice like, "A nice family, I'd be ashamed if something happened to them." Whereas according to Wanderer's voice lines, what Pinocchio is actually saying is, "Hey, nice family, Don. Yeah, be ashamed if something happened to him, huh?" I mean, in the Commedia dell'arte, Pulcinella is a bit of an enigma. He has no defined characteristics. You know, sometimes he's a bully, sometimes he's a coward. Sometimes he's rich, sometimes he's poor. And hell, sometimes he's called both traits at the same time, so we'll have to wait and see what's going on with him. We're gonna need Arlecchino's voice line about him to see if he's actually a good guy or an awful, evil man. I mean, he sends Child's family flowers and candy. But anyway, moving on to the 4th ranked Harbinger, we have Arlecchino. Arlecchino, also known as the Knave, is not to be confused with the previous Arlecchino, who was also known as the Knave, is the current head of the House of the Hearth, not to be confused with the previous head of the House of the Hearth, who was also Arlecchino, also known as the Knave. Yeah, funny, huh? You see, what happened here is when our Arlecchino was just a kid in the House of the Hearth, she defeated the previous head of the House of the Hearth at that time and took over. The previous head of the House of the Hearth was also known as Arlecchino and was also a Harbinger. After taking over the house, she adopted a more relaxed stance than the previous Knave and developed a relationship with the kids there. For example, she gave Fermanet some closure by telling him what happened to his mother, and also saved Lenny and Lynette from being diddled by a noble. Arlecchino would then assign the twins with different tasks like gathering incriminating evidence and simply running amok through all of Fontaine. As a Fontanian, she is concerned with the prophecy and wants to save the House of the Hearth from it, and has received permission from the Tsaritsa to use the Gnosis to save Fontaine before handing it over to her. This is all we know for now, but I'm sure our information on her will grow considerably in the future. Moving on to the top 3 Harbingers, keep in mind they all have power equal to that of the gods. At number 3, we have possibly the most intriguing, no, not possibly, is the most intriguing and mysterious Harbinger, Columbina, also known as Damselette. The only thing we know about her is she is extremely dangerous, so dangerous in fact that Child, a man who loves to fight, is still weary about her and says something doesn't feel right. Hell, even Wanderer warns us about her, but who is she? There's a couple of theories floating around, but given her appearance resembles that of a seraphim, one that I like is a theory that says she's the original Seelie who fell in love with the Outlander. For those unaware, it's said that long ago, the Seelie race was once a beautiful and wise race, before the ancestor Seelie fell in love with an Outlander causing disaster to befall the land. The end result was the destruction of the Seelie race and the Moon Sisters killing each other. The two lovers fled to the Dark Sea, but the disaster soon caught up with them and wiping their memories completely. One thing to add is the headpiece she's wearing resembles the bottom of Seelie quartz. Furthermore, in the Adventurer's artifact set, it stated that an adventurer who's exploring a land where, quote, the sun doesn't shine, as he tore his way recklessly through the foliage, the adventurer tripped on a tree root. When he regained consciousness, he saw a girl so beautiful that he was willing to give up his adventurer's life to be with her. Her appearance was surreal, with a cluster of feathers adorning her hair. That's right, guess who has flowers on their head? Furthermore, a place where the sun doesn't shine could be either the Dark Sea or the Abyss, which are both reasonable places that Columbina could be. It could be that Celestia was the reason the disaster befell the Celia race, which is why she sides with the Cryo Archon, but because she has no memories of the events, she seems aloof and a bit off. But we'll have to see. It could be none of those. Also, depending on the timing, because the timing for events this far back isn't really known, she could be older than Morax. And that dude's over 6,000 years old, so she could be old. Moving on to the second ranked Harbinger, it's Dottore, also known as the Doctor. I did a whole separate video dedicated to Dottore's lore because it's hilariously corrupt, but I'll do a quick rundown here. Before joining the Harbingers, he went by the name Zandik at Sumerio Academia before he killed his research partner, getting him kicked from the Academia. Piero would eventually find him and convince him to join the Fatui with the promise of a plethora of delectable children to experiment on. I mean, dude, how many people has Piero recruited? He's a hustler, man. It was here he would become known as the Doctor and would establish himself as an equal rights defender, experimenting on everyone of all ages and all races. I mean, most of them ended up dead, but game's the game. Also, he has a considerable amount of strength, considering he defeated Ursa the Drake in one go, despite the fact that that dragon was terrorizing Mondstadt for thousands of years. Anyway, moving on to the ultimate Harbinger, it's the head of the military branch, Capitano. Not much is known about Capitano, other than he's headed for Naalan currently, and doesn't seem to know child exists, or something like that. I see some theories state that Capitano could be the Bloodstained Knight. The Bloodstained Knight was a knight of Favonius who 500 years ago served under Grandmaster Arundolius. He was trained by La Senora's lover Rostam, interesting little tidbit right there, and became a powerful knight obsessed with justice. He would soon lose himself, however, killing many enemies, soon becoming stained by all the blood from the monsters. Eventually, everything, his sword and his armor, would become black. People would run from him fearing he was a monster too. As a result, he saw no place for him in the world and went to Conria hoping to die, but soon realized the truth of the situation. Celestia was turning the Conrians into monsters. As a result, he pledged himself to the Abyss. So yeah, this is like my biggest issue with this theory, is that Capitano serves the Fatui, whereas the Bloodstained Knight serves the Abyss, but a lot of missing time, you never know. They also do seem to both have strong ideals, as we saw Capitano condemn Senora's method, saying it tarnished her honor, while the Bloodstained Knights had a really strong sense of justice. So I mean, justice, honor, it's like the same thing, I think. Maybe it's not a coincidence that you have two very powerful knights who have very strong sense of ideals. I mean, clearly you look at Mondstadt's group of fucking ragtag bunch of bitches, and you could, yeah, I guess, man, maybe this theory's not off. Now that we have the Harbingers done, it's time to move on to the big boss of the Fatui. It's the smoothest talker in all of Teyvat, Piero. Piero was a royal mage of Conria who lived with a traveler sibling for some time before eventually the cataclysm hits. Being a pure-blood Conrian, he's cursed with immortality and obviously grew to hate the gods, and became the first member of the Fatui. Since becoming a big boss of the Fatui, he's recruited Dottore, Scaramouche, and Senora, and seems to be in complete control of the Fatui's operations, sending people like Scaramouche to the Abyss or Dottore to the Tarasuna. He's a very secretive man, as apparently both Child and Wanderer make it a point to say that they don't know much about him and only see him on important days. So, that wraps up all the available lore on the Fatui Harbingers. Not gonna lie, I think my favorite one is Columbina. I might do a separate video on her. I like her. I've grown a liking to her, but who knows?